Welcome back to Real Estate 101. I'm your host, Joe Terceira. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between quote and estimates. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Daniel Ott of Artisan Contracting. Daniel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
All right, Dan, why don't you explain to our viewers what are quotes and estimates?
A quote or an estimate, sometimes used interchangeably, those terms, is the price that a contractor brings to a homeowner.
All right.
And it is usually accompanied by a proposal which will include both the pricing and the scope of work included in the project.
Okay, so what pricing systems do contractors normally use?
Most contractors will hand an estimate to the client.
Okay, and when you say estimate, what do you mean by estimate?
An estimate really is an educated guess. It's a little more detailed than taking 10 seconds and picking a number out of the air, but we at Artisan Contracting sometimes liken it to throwing a dart against a wall.
Right. So what is a quote exactly?
A quote is a much more accurate number accompanied by a much more detailed scope of work that's gotten by much more time and research and firm numbers.
Okay, so when a quote is provided to a customer, generally the quote would be the final bill, or are there any variances?
It depends from time to time. There are different levels of quotes.
Okay, so what are the major differences between quotes and estimates?
One of the things we kind of touched on already, the major difference between them is the accuracy. Banks will tell their clients, as well as home renovation television shows, to take your estimate and add 20 to 30% to find out your probable final invoice amount. So that means an estimate for $80,000 will most likely cost you $100,000 or more when you're done.
Okay.
A quote is going to be a much more accurate price. One of the other differences between them, although it should be obvious in the package that you receive as a homeowner, but one of the biggest differences is the amount of time it takes to put one of these together. A typical estimate will take a contractor maybe 3 hours to put together, and that includes a proposal and the scope of work, and it's ready to present. And their proposal may be 2-3 pages long. A typical quote for me takes me about 35 hours to put together and is an average of 12 pages long.
So it's very thorough.
Yes.
Okay, and why is it important to understand the difference?
Oftentimes, more often than not, price, if it's not the only factor, is going to be a major factor for a client to determine which contractor to choose. Contractors know this and will lowball the number in order to get the contract,
right.
or get the contract, exactly, get the sign on the dotted line. Once a client has started the project with a contractor, they're kind of stuck with them. Now, you may say, well, if the contractor knows, and he does, that the final number is going to be more than what's been written down, why does he do it? Well, because he also knows that most other contractors are doing the same thing.
Okay, so is it actually possible to guarantee a price on a quote?
Absolutely, we do. Again, you're going to have to spend a lot more time and research, and also you need to have much more thorough knowledge of different construction eras and how a house was built. The only thing that we can't guarantee is what's buried in your backyard if your project includes digging for a foundation.
Okay, so let's say a homeowner, you provide a quote and a homeowner signs and they accept. Can they change the scope of work as the renovation is taking place?
Absolutely. I like to be as flexible as possible for clients. So even if we're halfway through a project and they've gone for the full quote and everything is completely spelled out, and they decide to take something out, and most usually that is the painting. Okay, people say, well, I'll do the painting myself, keep the cost down now. By all means, we'll take it out, we'll credit you for that. At the same time, if we're doing your kitchen and you decide to add a bathroom, I'm not going to say no to work.
That's right.
But even the small changes, such as adding a pot light or changing the decking surface material for the deck, not a problem. We can change those things as we go and make adjustments.
Okay, so are there different stages to quotes?
Yes, there are, and I will go through a lot of them with a client when I'm with them. We'll start with the first meeting. I will give a ballpark figure as to what the project might cost based on very general information that we have after being together for half an hour. So we may be off by more than 30%, but it's a good ballpark to start from. If they like that sort of range, then we will continue with the process and we'll get a little more accurate. I will do a quick estimate. Again, I'll only take about an hour to put some sort of number together so we know a little bit more where we're going. And as we go along, my estimate will get a little more accurate. I'm not going to tell them every time something changes a little bit throughout the process. And then at the end, you will have either a good quote, which may still have allowances in it, which is mostly what estimates are made up of.
Right.
And then you have the full-blown, absolutely guaranteed quote, which is everything listed. The scope of work is extremely detailed. There's a materials list for absolutely everything that we'll be using and one number.
So Daniel, do you have any examples of this?
Absolutely. Once in a while, we have a client call us and say, look, we have two quotes in front of us, not knowing the difference. And they'll say, why is yours so much higher than someone else's? And we will offer our services to come and take a look at both of those and to tell them the differences between the two. They'll photocopy it and black out the names so we're not comparing actual people, we're just comparing the words and the pricing on those.
Right.
And we will explain to them the difference between an estimate and a quote, just as we've done today, and then some of the differences, maybe reading between the lines of the scopes of work.
Right.
A great example that I always love to bring up is I've seen an estimate where HVAC is written, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and there's an allowance for $7,000, and then there's 5 bullet points. Well, reality dictates that the first 2 bullet points are going to cost at least $7,000.
Right.
So how do they get the other 3 bullet points to be done? They pay extra.
It's an overage.
With us, we don't have that allowance. We just say, look, these are the bullet points, this is what we're doing, and it doesn't matter what it costs us, we'll get it done for you.
Okay, so for today's final question, if one of the viewers of our show is interested in getting a quote or estimate from Artisan Contracting, what's the next step?
To get a quote, we do require drawings. So even if you get that from somebody else, an architect or an engineer or sometimes a friend, that's fine, we will quote off of those, but we do prefer to be part of the process right from the beginning. Drawings will enable us to do more than theoretical numbers. If we're finishing your basement, theoretically we might build 30 feet of walls. But if we have a drawing to go off of, we can actually measure that, oh, actually you're going to be using 60 feet of walls.
Right.
Or 25 feet of walls. I can also send these drawings off to my subcontractors and get accurate quotes from them for such things as the HVAC systems, as well as the electrical.
Plumbing.
Yeah, absolutely everything. Even the stair guy can take a look at the drawings of the stairs and he can give you an accurate quote as to what it's going to cost him to build that.
All right.
The other thing, if you want to go, because even at that point, we still have the possibility that you have tiles on your floor. Great, it's detailed, but what kind of tiles? That can change. So to be absolutely full-blown, you do have to go through an interior decorating process, again, either with us or with somebody else. We do provide staff to do that, to meet with you, pick out everything from the kitchen sink, literally, to the paint color on the walls.
All right, Dan, thanks very much for coming on today's show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
If anybody has any more questions or would like a fantastic home renovation, they can get in contact with Daniel Ott of Artisan Contracting. I'm your host, Joe Terceira. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.